For most illustrators and photographers, being on the proverbial cover of the Rolling Stone is a far-fetched dream. My next guest, however, has not only had his provocative satire featured in this distinguished publication, but also countless others like Time, Playboy, Newsweek, and the New York Times. Most recently, his piece titled 9/11 Questions, which challenges the official September 11th narrative, was successfully admitted to the 9/11 Memorial Museum in New York City. Here to explain more is the man himself, Anthony Freda. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, Andrew. Great to be here.
So Anthony, I understand that you haven't always been a 9/11 skeptic, a 9/11 truther, so describe this awakening process or shift within yourself that had you sort of begin to question these issues in a different light.
Yeah, well, I lived in Manhattan when the Trade Center was attacked, and it was in my neighborhood, not far from where I lived, and I watched the whole day's events unfold from my rooftop. So I just became wrapped up in the accepted narrative, and I had no questions, and I didn't even understand that there really was a movement of people that questioned the official narrative. And in 2006, I got this assignment from the Village Voice called Fakes on a Plane, which was a story talking about the various 9/11 truth movies that have been made and these documentaries and the movement in general. And I was completely ignorant about the movement, and I also was actually, not only was I not part of the truth movement, I was hostile to these ideas when I first got this assignment. So as part of the assignment, I did my research, and I spent the whole night, or several nights, studying these documentaries and going over them and looking into the research and the people who were presenting these ideas. And I was prepared on the onset to basically do a hit piece to expose these people as charlatans and tinfoil hat-wearing lunatics. But through the course of my investigations, I found that these are very sober, serious people. These are scientists, these are physicists, these are architects, engineers, these are ex-military, these are military foreign intelligence agencies, people who know how things really work in these intelligence operations and really understand the world of terrorism and really understand the world of covert operations. And I felt like a fool by the time I got through, because I was fully prepared to make fun of these people, and by the end of my research and in the course of doing this assignment, I kind of became part of the movement.
Graffiti artist Banksy has said that, quote, effective art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable, and I think a large part of evoking this emotional reaction through artwork is accomplished through satire, and I know satire is very prevalent through your portfolio. People like yourself, Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart have made entire careers out of satirizing the news, media, etc. So why do you think satire, specifically with respect to art, is such an effective way of communicating these ideas?
Well, Oscar Wilde said, if you're going to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh or they'll kill you. And I think that really sums it up, because people don't want to be challenged. They don't want the views of their world, their predetermined ideas of the way things work, to be questioned or challenged, and they will react to that sometimes violently and always defensively. So they'll defend their position, their worldview as they see it. So when you raise these questions that fundamentally challenge their ideas of the way the world works and who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, and their understanding of history itself, they're going to react. And some people react very strongly. So you have to come up with creative ways, and I think art is the best way to do it. And I think Banksy's right. And I mean, it's interesting because he's a guy who shows you the power of art. He makes one picture and the whole world pays attention.
A picture's worth 1,000 words, Anthony. Now I want to shift gears. Back in January, 8 cartoonists were killed as a result of the Charlie Hebdo shooting in Paris for depicting the Islamic prophet Muhammad. Given this new brand of terrorism, this war on art, do you feel as though now you almost have the crosshairs on your back, or maybe in a smaller sense, do you at least, question or think twice before bringing paintbrush to canvas? And before you answer that, I'd also like to point out, an irony is that art is supposed to be cathartic and liberating, but fact is anymore, when you're painting these, provocative pictures, you're putting your life on the line.
As a person who makes provocative pictures for a living, I was shocked and incredibly disturbed by what happened there, and I realized that really painted a picture that what we do is important and could actually have ramifications that are life and death. I mean, the idea that somebody would die over a picture is shocking to me, because I still think of myself just as a guy making silly pictures in the end of the day. But these images are much more than that. These images have the power to provoke people to violence, and I'm trying to provoke people to peace. So it's there's a dichotomy there, and there's a lot of irony in the whole situation of the Charlie Hebdo thing, because the response to it has been to clamp down on free speech. All these people marching for free speech. The French reaction has been to put in place a French version of the Patriot Act and to clamp down on free speech. And so, mission accomplished as far as the terrorists go. But I feel I've been in the crosshairs. I mean, my work that I've done, and as far as 9/11 goes, I've had death threats from people. I've had people say they want to beat me up and kill me because my ideas challenge their notions of what patriotism is and what America stands for, and it goes to such a deep core that they're actually willing to threaten me with physical violence.
How did you convince the curators at the 9/11 Memorial Museum to accept 9/11 questions into the exhibit? Because it really seems like a story too good to be true. And also, please go into the process around which that came into the museum, please.
Well, it started with an email. I sent them an email saying, you can't have a 9/11 museum without the truth movement being represented in some way. And I didn't see any artifacts in there that did such. So I presented my artwork, and I think I wrote a letter explaining my point of view and explaining that there's millions and millions of people who question the official narrative, who do not think this story has been told. So before you literally go etching it into stone in the form of a museum, maybe we should find out what really happened. My point that I wrote to them included all of those points I just made, and I wrote this letter fully, expecting that they would either not respond or say thank you, but no thank you. But to my delight and shock, they said, we agree with you, and we want to include your piece. We want to acquire it to be part of the permanent collection of the National September 11th Memorial Museum. So that's how the whole process started. They invited me to the museum. They did an hour-and-a-half interview at the museum, which John Masseria recorded for this documentary he's making called Behind Truth Art, which you can watch on YouTube, and you'll see the actual meeting where I'm in the 9/11 museum talking about 9/11 truth, which was a bizarre experience, to say the least. And they were very gracious, and they let me explain my piece and let me explain my point of view and let me speak for the 9/11 truth community. So that was a great opportunity, and the piece is being acquired. It will be part of the permanent collection. It will be out on loan to various museums around the world, and it's in the final stages now of negotiating the actual contract.
Anthony, we have just about 30 seconds left. Fill viewers in a little bit more about this upcoming documentary, Truth Behind Art, and where they can find your work.
You can find my work at anthonyfreda.com, but the film by John Masseria is called Behind Truth Art, and if you just go to YouTube and plug that in, you'll see some results and some previews. The movie's not finished yet, but it should be very interesting. It's about various activists who are working for truth and justice and trying to expose the lies of the establishment with counter narratives and how this has affected their lives and their personal lives and their professional lives. And it should be a fascinating documentary when it comes out sometime later this year.
I can't wait to watch it when it does come out. Anthony, Freda, thank you so much for joining me. And by the way, I do have a list of so many pages of notebook paper worth of ideas for satirical art. I'd love to commission you in the future and work with you to collaborate. But again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my great pleasure. You are the future, my friend. I got my eye on you, and I would love to collaborate anytime.
Thank you very much.